Previously on Something Who.
So, hello and welcome to the podcast where we take something old, a Doctor Who story from the original series, compare it with something new, one from the new series, and add something borrowed, a sketch, to make Something Who. Yes, it's Something Who podcast. I'm Richard, and we're back to discuss a couple of Doctor Who stories about cut-off villages. So first we'll examine third Doctor story, The Demons, from Season 8. And after that, we'll have a look at 13th Doctor story, Village of the Angels, from the most recent series. So with me to make this a local podcast for local people, we have, as our special guest, cosplayer and Who fan about town, Ellie, also known as TARDIS Monkey.
Hello.
We've got science and astronomy writer, Giles.
It's me.
And graphic designer and Dalek expert, Gav.
Hello.
A scheduling issue means that Paul is sadly missing this time, but we hope he'll be back soon. Okay, so Village of the Angels by Chris Chibnall and Maxine Alderton, in that order. Although, I don't know, my view was that the dialogue was rather good in this. And directed, as mentioned previously, by Jamie Magnus Stone. Although it does start off with a repeat of the "Me and Your Beautiful as Yet Unborn Child," so maybe that's the Chris Chibnall bit. Any particular thoughts? Who wants to go first? I mean, I guess we can all say where we were when we first saw it, because it's not that long ago. Now, who was to say something about it?
Kevin McNally is brilliant.
Yeah?
I think he's wonderful as Jericho. I think it's such a brilliant character that's come from the whole of Flux in general, actually.
Yeah. And there's something, I think in particular, when the Doctor and Jericho first get together, there's a real kind of there's a nice succession of dialogue. It reminds me of Villa Diodati in that kind of interplay, and it feels like actually it's Jodie's finest hour. Well, that and Villa Diodati, it kind of really feels like that's what she's really good at, and that shows her character off at the best. And it's a shame that Maxine Alderton's only had 2 goes during that era, because it seems like they're both so excellent.
Yeah, but I mean, both of the stories she's done, I think, are my favourite of the Jodie era. She really gets the 13th Doctor, because I love the bit in Village of the Angels where Jericho's like, "Oh, I'm Professor Eustachius Jericho," and she's like, "Oh, that's a great word, Eustachius, 33 on a Scrabble board." And I love that kind of humour, and Jodie's Doctor really sort of shines with those quips, and that's why I think they've got such a good chemistry between each other, because Jericho wants to learn everything, wants to get more knowledge, and the Doctor's willing to sort of teach him and banter with him, and I mean, they hit it off straight away for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that stands out with this episode, is that it's witty.
Yeah.
And I think a sharp wit is sadly lacking a lot of the time not just Jodie's Doctor, but you specifically feel it when the Doctor isn't spouting the words of a genius, because the Doctor should be most of the time. Yeah, that scene where the Doctor and Jericho meet is terrific. Yeah. Really enjoyed that. I was mildly frustrated the pre-titles scene, because there's that absolutely beautiful concept where Claire, is it?
Yeah.
Has to lie about her age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get the superb moment of show don't tell, where she lies about her age, and it sets the lie detector off, and it's just spot on. But then Jericho comes over and explains back to us what's just happened and why it's important, and it's deeply frustrating, because it turns on its head. And now I wouldn't like to conjecture as to how that happened, but it just feels like somebody came along and went, well, what if the audience didn't fully understand this? I better just write some exposition to ensure that how clever this is not lost on anyone. And that that was a minor irritation. But yeah, there's loads of really good lines in this. There's funny stuff and inventive stuff. I like the angel catching fire when when she chucks it, and she says, "Brilliant, made it worse."
I love the graphic of sort of when she crunches up the paper and you see the angel like squish up and everything as well. I think that's really clever, and I do like. I think the graphics in this are brilliant. Sort of when they're stood on the edge of the village and you see the stars and everything, and it's just like going into nothingness. I love that because it's that sense of like, oh, we're trapped, crap kind of thing. What do we do? Yeah. And I love those kind of like bottleneck sort of stories kind of thing where they can't get out of a situation. They've got to think their way out.
It does feel like, as well as the. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I don't want to constantly have a go at Chris Chibnall about things, but it does feel like these two stories. When you see the name Maxine Alderton on the credits, everything goes up several notches. Not the dialogue sings, and the other thing that is very rare across all of 21st century Doctor Who in general. It seems to be very concerned with its main job is to scare the bejesus out of you and just have lots of clever and creepy ideas, and just whether it is just her, but it just feels like these two stories just get the idea. Okay, we're going to do things. We're going to we are going to kill people in horrible ways, and that you're going to feel quite bad about. I love the bit where the angels start ringing the doorbell, and that's just classic. That's just perfect Doctor Who. You're in this situation of these horrible monsters around the house, and that just the bathos thing of they're ringing the doorbell. It's just it starts off funny and then just gets creepy as they keep on ringing.
Yeah, and I love the bit as well when the angel sort of uses their voice as well against them and talks to them in a really creepy way. Yeah.
Just on the subject of perhaps do we extrapolate too much from what little we know about who writes what? Because I am reminded of a couple of early examples from the Russell T Davies era when people said when it was a Paul Cornell script, the quality went up. Yeah. And it transpired that they were essentially page one rewrites by Russell T Davies. And
Human Nature.
All of the credit that was being ascribed to Paul Cornell's apparently different script was entirely people's perceptions because there was a different name on the front. Yeah. And it turned out they were both Russell scripts. So it would be fascinating to know the truth of it because, I guess we'll probably never know.
It's funny because you saying that, like, with both their names on it, I don't know, I think I know at what points Chris Chibnall takes over and Maxine does her stuff, because all the village stuff really is coherent, really sort of ties in, and it's a shame because it's a shame the Flux stuff doesn't, apart from the division stuff at the end, but we'll talk about that later, like the stuff with Belle suddenly just gets shoved in the middle and you're kind of like taken out of the whole spooky thing that they're all trapped in this house kind of thing, because it's like, oh crap, we need to explain about the Flux plot because we've only got 6 episodes in which to do it kind of thing. And it's a shame because, if they could have had, like, I don't know, Belle ties in with the angels that brings her into the village or something that just incorporates it, but it just feels like somebody's gone cut, slot, right, that's that done, right, back to the main action kind of thing.
And it's peculiar as well because we have this situation where there's an ongoing serialized storyline and some of that is woven seamlessly into the episodic stories. And in the Village of the Angels, you've got the motives for the angels culminates nicely and it doesn't feel forced and it ties all into the division. But as you say, the Bell stuff and the
Azure.
Thank you. They're just so crowbarred in. It feels like they just don't belong in this story. And it would have been better just to not have them in it at all and pick up their storylines elsewhere.
Because it does feel like we're watching 2 different things at once. It's almost like you're watching the telly and something on your phone at the same time.
I'm wary, as Gav is, of, I think they're 2 great stories and they both seem to hit quite a few of the same buttons of being quite gothic and Hinchcliffey, and this and Diodati, and it seems a bit of a coincidence that they're the two with Maxine Alderton's name. But on the other hand, it feels like if that was all that Chibnall had done was cut and shunt these scenes to pick up the ongoing plot, you feel like he would have given Maxine Alderton. It would have been Maxine Alderton and Chris Chibnall, not the other way round. Or he might not even have taken the credit.
I mean, because I wholeheartedly think, like, towards the end as well with the division stuff, it feels like to me that they work together maybe on that bit.
Well, it must have come out of the, and that's so fundamental to the structure of the season, I guess, and what they're doing with the overall plot, that I'm sure the mechanics of that were worked out well in advance.
Mm.
The Bell stuff, this is the first time I've watched any of Flux since watching it complete on broadcast. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to go back and see the earlier stories of the characters before their final payoff, if you can call it that. And it was deeply unrewarding. Because you would hope that having seen a character's journey, that going back and seeing their early stages and the choices that they made and how that informed where they got to would be interesting to delve back into their backstory. But I just found it really hollow and frustrating, and I didn't get any sort of sense of characterization or direction. And I do wonder about these rumours of which, if any, characters might have been. There was a rumour for a while that Vinda was going to be Captain Jack, and then there was the rumour that the other villain would have been Captain Jack. And I did think that, the Serpent potentially was going to be John Barrowman. So I've heard. Which might have made more sense. I don't know. But I was thinking, would Belle's quest have made any difference if she'd been a significant character from the Doctor's past? Not that I'm saying she would ever have been Captain Jack, but I'm just trying to isolate what it was that was so kind of vacuous about that whole quest that these two characters were on, that never felt... I was never invested in it.
The issue is that there's no climax to it, is it? Because when they come together in the final episode... oh, great, we've actually come together, and then within about 15 seconds they're being split up again and sent off in different directions. And it's like, if it was such a big, good quest, they said, no, we're never going to leave each other's presence again for the rest of our lives because, we've learnt how disastrous that was, or something like that. But it's like, oh, hi, I'll see you in a bit. Yeah, it's just, it just didn't feel...
Yeah, I think that impacts more as well, because when that climax doesn't happen, especially sort of at the end of Village as well, because we've got the big cliffhanger of the 13th Doctor turning into a weeping angel, and you think, bloody hell, like that would stick with you for a whole week as a kid. You'd be absolutely fretting about the Doctor. But then you get into the title sequence, then you get this extra bit with Vinda, and I just remember going, why was that there? Because you could have just left that until next week, because you wanted to leave it on Jodie turning into the weeping angel.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the worst misjudgments I've seen in the entire... in Doctor Who, full stop, to be honest. It's just like you have this amazing cliffhanger there, and then you completely botch it by sticking in a couple of minutes of stuff that really doesn't go anywhere. And it
does that weird thing of the title sequences, the end titles are remixed, aren't they? So you're immediately wrong-footed, and then it breaks up. Like the idea that the Flux is corrupting things, the image pixelates, and then you get this mid-credits scene. And really inconsequential, boring. It sucks all of the tension out.
I know it's one of my bugbears, but my pet bugbears about things, but it does feel like the characters are both like generic Chibnall, hard-bitten, spacey people. When he's writing stuff in the future, it always veers towards the generic. For me, it doesn't feel like he's ever got anything terribly well defined about what's special about them.
So they're like those two characters out of the Ghost Monument.
Yes, yeah, all the ones from Rancid Old Cat's Meat or etc.
Oh. That took me a second then.
I heard something about cat meat.
Rancid old cat's meat. Whatever the finale of series 10.
Calls something.
Rancid
I can't remember. Yeah.
Yes.
That remains the only Doctor Who, the only extant Doctor Who that I haven't seen all of because I passed out halfway through the first time it was on.
Okay.
And the subsequent attempts to rewatch it, I turned it off. So,
I would say, but it's got Phyllis Logan in it, but unfortunately, yeah.
I was going to say, Gav, that I was very impressed by the way you've embraced the Something Who concept of not having seen things since its original broadcast, but yeah, you didn't even watch it on its original broadcast, so that's even further.
Yeah, so I mean I could have watched it today, but I watched Space Pirates episode 2 instead, so it's my priorities.
Yeah.
Getting back to the good stuff,
Yes.
it is the main plot.
Space
It
Pirates.
does, and that yes, it does feel like it's interesting. I thought it's clever because the Weeping Angels when they came in was such a clever concept, and then they gradually piled more and more complications onto them about what the rules were. The original rules were very simple, and then it felt like it was a bit of diminishing returns. This one manages to absolutely, compared to their last proper outing, which I guess was Angels Take Manhattan, all that time ago. It feels like yes, they've ingested all of these rules, and yet they come up with different and clever things to do with pretty much all of them instead, and put a new spin on it. So you have the thing of them coming through screens and being in drawings and so on, but it doesn't overcomplicate matters. You know exactly what the threat is at every moment.
And I like it answers the question on sort of like what happens if an angel gets you twice, and then it's like, oh, you just die. Okay, right. Now we know that. Sort of that's a new threat kind of thing. Yeah, poor Jean and I forgot because he's the Silurian man, isn't he, from Warriors Deep?
Oh, right,
good lord. Yes.
Yeah, he plays. I can't remember which Silurian he is, but he's one of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
But both of them, get zapped. That's cool to see, because obviously, once they get sent back in time, you think, oh well, the angels can't touch them now. Oh wait, no, they can.
Yeah.
The only thing that's slightly grated about that scene, as I said, I'm all in favour of here's doing horrible and unexpected things to characters, but it's just the fact he gets into it is such a horror movie stereotype.
Yeah.
Of
Like,
him saying,
no,
it's just a statue and walking past it, having just been zapped back into time by another angel, only presumably a couple of hours before in his personal timeline. The fact he's so blasé and so it's nothing is.
It did make me laugh when the little girl watches him die.
Oh, he never liked me anyway.
And then she just a dead-eyed stare, and she goes, "He was never nice to me anyway." She's like, "Oh my god, she's a psychopath."
Oh yeah, so.
A great actress, isn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
She's absolutely brilliant.
So the old guy is Gerald, who's played by Vincent Brimble, and he played Tarpuck in Warriors of the Deep.
Wow.
Blimey. Okay.
That's amazing. I'm amazed.
Good lord.
Is Matthew Corbett in this one? Just curious.
No, but Sooty is.
Yes.
I mean, I guess something else that Chris Chibnall has almost certainly written in this one is the bits that are a direct parallel with the Demons. So the reverse of polarity of the neutron flow. I mean, of course, he doesn't quite say that in the Demons, but it's pretty close. And then also you've got the barrier and then the prodding with a stick and so on.
Yeah.
So I doubt that Maxine Alderton would have been up on the Demons.
Opening scene in both is someone stumbling around in a churchyard looking
Yes.
for OK.
Yeah.
In the first one, it's looking for the dog, not the missing child, but yeah.
You've got the psychic research, which it seems to be psychic, but it's science.
Yes.
You've got statues that can move.
Yep.
True. Yeah.
You've got an ancient burial site that turns out to be a spaceship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good lord, yes. And there were quite so many.
I mean, whoever chose these two stories is a genius.
Yeah, well done, Ellie.
I was like, oh, I wonder why I picked those.
just to, I mean, I don't want to let one story off the hook and not lay into the other one in a similar style, but does this make any sense? I mean, the village is isolated.
Yeah.
But there is a barrier. What's the barrier between two versions of the same village?
Yeah, I never quite understood this, because when they get to one end of the village, there's just nothingness, it's just space.
Yes.
But then when they get to the burial site, it's two time zones that have collided together.
That's what I don't get,
Is it sort of, entropy that, like, the barrier's crumbling and it's going to get up to a certain point in the two time zones, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I didn't know. I don't think there was because I was looking for an explanation for it this time round and I didn't see one. Because it was that thing of, I mean, it looked like it was the writers showing their workings, in that if you've got a story where the angels are zapping people back through time, then you end up isolating your characters in two different places. So unless they've got a time telephone, then you can't have any dramatic conclusion. So this thing's contrived as there's a barrier between the time zones, but it's confusing because that's not, I don't think, the barrier that's separating the village from the outside world, which I think is that the village is essentially lifted out of time and space, but the perimeter is shrinking.
Right,
for some reason we're not quite clear on, which is why. But the other
quantum extraction.
The extra confusion is that we're dealing with the flux as a whole, and the actual consequences and behaviour of the flux are never clearly defined. So I think I thought the first time round that the crumbling edge was something to do with the flux eating away at the planet, and I don't think it is.
I
think
kind of read it as being something to do with quantum extraction, that they've lifted the whole thing out, and it's gradually slipping back into the real universe, and they're on a isolated floating island of...
Okay, so you think that the bits that are sort of crumbling away are being returned to Earth as they go? Okay.
Yeah, I still don't understand sort of like how the time thing... Because surely they would just lift out one time zone. They wouldn't need to worry about two of them. But it's almost that kind of MacGuffin technique where it's like, oh, we need to show the little girl's the old woman kind of thing. And then it was like, that's all it's used for. It's not used for any other purpose kind of thing.
It feels like that scene popped into the head of one or other writer, and there had to be a way to get there.
Yeah.
Because that was a really neat idea.
Yeah.
Although it was, I mean, going straight back to Blink, it's what's his name who Sally meets, and then he's in the hospital bed in the next scene. It's a more direct version of that, but it was nicely done. It just may not have been the most logical thing, and I'm still not 100% sure. So the angel that was hiding in Claire, the extraction team of angels came for that angel, and then that angel sold the Doctor out instead.
Yeah, but it's even before that. So basically, Claire is genuinely mystic in some way, and she saw a vision of an angel in our time zone, and that then caused an angel actually to be in her somehow, which was the angel that's part of Division. No,
it's the renegade one. It's the runaway one.
And then another angel came after her, and that zapped her back in time. And then the rest of the angels came for her back in that time zone. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
sounds about right.
But of course, if they touched her, then she'd have got zapped there, because that would have been the second time.
I can't recall whether there's any explanation for the fact that she's had these visions, because she's had visions of an angel and of the Doctor and of the TARDIS. And I don't know whether that ever gets picked up in later. So whether that is just that she has got some psychic ability, whatever the Doctor Who...
Yeah, I think she just says that she just has psychic visions, and that's literally the line that's said, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, right, well, that's accepted. But it's never really delved into.
I do quite like the fact it's not the fact that the Doctor has met Claire in the present day isn't a predestination paradox.
Yes.
So that this is Claire after she's been zapped back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that there isn't. It's not the Moffat trope of, okay, the reason she knew you in the present day is because she met you in her past and your future, kind of thing. So I thought, okay, at least it's a bit more straightforward than that, even if it does come down to visions and things.
So it is quite interesting, as one of you was saying, that the mystery that Jericho can't get his head around. Well, actually, he doesn't realise it's a mystery anyway, does he? Of her being born in the wrong time is perfectly sensible when you know that there's angels involved, and yet you've got this mysticism in it as well. So that's a bit like, I suppose, with the demons, where they want it to be science, and then there's the odd bit of mysticism thrown in as well, just to add to the plot line. I said the base is really under siege in this. I mean, there's not just one or two angels. There's a whole heap of them.
Yeah, I love the concept as well that they're like trapped in this basement and they've got no way out, and all these. I love the bit when they've done like the psychic contact link between Claire and the Doctor, and Jericho throws a cup of tea at the Doctor to wake her up, to show that they're surrounded by sort of all the angels and stuff. And I love, going back to the contact scene, I love how beautifully that's shot on the beach and everything. I think it's really sort of nicely atmospheric and weird, because I like weird Doctor Who kind of things, like All in the Mind, like Kinder and stuff. And sort of seeing the angel talking through her is like really creepy, and I love that this story brings back that creepiness of the Weeping Angels, because Angels in Manhattan, it's not one of my favourite stories, so to have the Weeping Angels back that are just like, yep, we're just going to zap you back in time because that's what we do, and spook you out is, that's why I think this is quite high up on my list of angel stories as well.
I liked how they talked about the sort of gratuitous nature of the angel's torment, because it kind of rationalises one of those otherwise difficult to reconcile issues with the angels, is that you kind of always got the feeling that they were probably always capable of getting people and they weren't trying very hard, and normally you have to just accept that as a dramatic conceit. But in this story it suggests that they like watching people suffer and playing with them. And it makes it more believable when you see these shots of the angel almost deliberately slowly approaching in steps, because there's been plenty of times where you've thought maybe the blinking's a little bit inconsistent here, because surely if they look away for that long the angel would get them, and yet it seems to have only moved 6 feet. And you kind of think the rules of this you just kind of have to gloss over, but once they've said no, they're pretty unkind,
playing with you,
and they're just doing it to mess with you, then you can reconcile an awful lot of their behaviour. And I like that in the cave at the end. Was it a cave? The basement? The secret the sex
secret
passage.
tunnel,
Yeah, where the doctor's, she says, I've got to turn my back and run. And you kind of roll your eyes thinking, well, it's either going to be a convenient getaway or she's going to be faster than the angels. But then it becomes a plot point, and the doctor says, well, that shouldn't have worked, and that's really creepy, because then you think, okay, these angels actually don't function in quite such a linear way as you might expect, and that was interesting. Yeah, it was a nice progression of the angels.
Yeah. I love that bit in the tunnel as well, with all the arms coming out of the walls. It's just so creepy. Yeah, I really like that. I like how clever the Weeping Angels are. When writers get Doctor Who monsters right, it's brilliant, because I always love Power of the Daleks, because they're just so clever and witty in sort of getting on the side of the humans and, trusting them and stuff like that. And that sinister thing of the Weeping Angels almost playing with their food is the best way to describe it. It's just such a great concept, because that's what like a tiger would do, or a lion kind of thing, is play around a little bit and go, now I'm gonna just eat your time energy or whatever and just send you back kind of thing, because I'm done with you now. I love that as a concept.
So we've got the angel using Claire's voice just talking about the division, and the Doctor mentions the division, and I guess that's re-establishing in people's minds, that thing that was in the last episode of the previous series. And then about 5 minutes later they start talking about division, and then essentially from down in nobody ever calls it the division anymore, it's just division. I wonder about that. I mean, I suppose they have to call it the Division because otherwise you'd say, "What's Division? Is that the thing from last time, or is it something different?" But obviously, he doesn't want to call it the Division now. He wants to call it Division because I suppose, without the article, it kind of it has a different kind of sense to it.
It reminded me of the silence when the silence shifted in meaning. Yes. Because 1 minute it was an event, and then the next minute it was an order. And I think when it was first hinted at that there was a division, that you thought, is this some kind of schism in society or the universe or who knows what?
And it's interesting that is how it eventually plays out, isn't it? Or sort of where it is located, as it were, in between universes.
I often wonder how tempted, if there was a notion of being tempted to call it the Celestial Intervention Agency. And run with that whole... Because there's an awful lot of consternation amongst Doctor Who fans about the Doctor working for Division. But, you got we've talked about it before, but the line in The Two Doctors where the Doctor, Patrick Troughton, Second Doctor, says, "I do jobs for the Time Lords and it's the price I pay for my freedom." It's not a huge extension of that. It's just thrown some amnesia in and rejig the timeline a bit. But it's the Timeless Child and the pre-Hartnell Doctors that tests people. But they almost feel like either one of those concepts should have been fully explored, but throwing them both in at once kind of... I think people might have been more invested in the Doctor having a sort of secret past life to do with Time Lord missions without having to also deal with the idea that the history of 1960s Doctor Who doesn't start when you thought it started and all of that, because that kind of muddied people's objections, I suppose, because it was sort of it was two lots of rewriting Doctor Who history thrown at people all in one go. And I think either would have been an interesting and very strong thing to explore on its own.
It's why I always think it's a shame with I forgot which episode it is now, but where we had that moment where we could have seen Joe Martin in action as the Doctor kind of thing, but then we get Jodie in a different coat. And I'm just and it really bugged me that, because it was that moment when we could have gone, oh, I see how this all ties in together now. Yes. But we've just got a reenactment of it, and you don't get the gravitas of the situation of like how Joe's Doctor would have dealt with it, and whether or not she's a Doctor that's part of the Division, and that's a pre-Hartnell Doctor, I don't know, or it's a parallel Doctor, whatever. You could have dropped some really lovely hints to sort of like keep the imagination going, because you never really want to sort of answer all the questions, because otherwise, what's the point in calling the show Doctor Who kind of thing. But it would have just given enough explanation for the whole Timeless Child thing, because I still don't really grasp the concept of it either. Yeah, it's a shame. And the whole Division thing as well, like turning Jodie into a weeping angel because they want to call her back, I think it's such a great concept that they're using the Doctor in that way still now, but then it just never comes to anything, and it's always really disappointing. And that's when I look back at certain episodes like Fugitive of the Jadoon and stuff, because I'm like, we've got such a great actress that's playing this amazing part, and she hasn't been given her time to shine. And I really hope at some point, maybe even if Big Finish do it at some stage, to really establish her character, because there's so much potential that we just haven't seen. But there's so much going on with Jodie's regeneration coming up and all that. It's so hard to bundle it all together. So yeah, I don't know, because obviously I don't know with the last 2 episodes that we've got left with Jodie whether or not we'll get any more Joe Martin stuff. I don't know, but yeah, we'll just wait and see. But yeah.
I mean, I think she's her character is reminiscent for me of Michael Jaston, and he's revealed as being between the 2 incarnations. You think, oh, they're going to do something with that, and then that's the last you ever hear of it.
You have Joe Martin look at the camera like, like kind of thing. Like.
Yeah, it's a great idea, but where's it going? I mean, for me, the third thing in your after your 2 things, Gav, so I can swallow, I think, the the Doctor being tied up with the Time Lords, and indeed that there's pre-Hartnell Doctors. I'd sooner there weren't, but I could live with that. But it's the Doctor being special that kind of kills it for me in the end. Because that kind of takes away a bit from the fact that he or she has decided to make something of themselves, rather than again this predestination thing, I suppose.
That's it. It's the Doctor is supposed to be a kind of anti-establishment, destabilizing little person who enters these situations, and with the skill and knowledge and bravery and nothing else and no weapons, that they can overcome great odds. And as you say, we now discover that they're the founder of Time Lord Society, and the reason that the most powerful race in the galaxy has its most powerful physiological asset, and the origin of all regeneration energy and all of this stuff. And it's like discovering your main character's Jesus when you just thought they were Columbo.
Columbo is Jesus.
Yeah.
That would be a good plot twist at the end of the final episode of Columbo.
I am Jesus.
I know you.
Just like the last thing he says before the title sequence of the last episode of Columbo, just turns to camera and goes, "I'm Jesus, by the way." At the end, and then you have to rewatch all of Columbo, knowing that he's the Son of God, and you're like, "Well, that's why he's so clever." You see, I've only had one glass of wine as well.
So, how does Jericho get got by the Angel? Because I thought they're going to get quantum locked because they're looking at each other. And then suddenly it doesn't work. Why is that? I still couldn't work it out on the second attempt. He's sort of sidling past. It looks like he's got past, and then suddenly, no, he hasn't. Does it stick out his hand or something at the last minute?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't quite.
Okay, well, never mind. I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? It happened.
Because plot.
Yes. Ergo, yeah.
I was just going to say, well, our director's coming back. Jamie Magnus Stone is directing the Centennial special, apparently, or has directed it by now. I guess it must be in the bank. So,
he is one of the good ones. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the visual style, the ones that he's done, they're all very exciting to look at, I think.
Yes, yeah. So I think
because I love the scene when they're in the tunnel and the lights are flicking on the torch and stuff, and you got the angels sort of like zooming up even closer. Because he does a lot of like nice angles that really make you feel uncomfortable in that situation. It makes it feel really claustrophobic in the tunnels and stuff. Yeah, I think his direction's brilliant.
I mean, he did the two at the end of the previous season. I mean, for all that people have problems with those two, it's not the visuals that are the issue. It's other things.
I mean, I would say sort of the Jodie Doctor Who era is the most beautifully shot.
Yeah.
I mean, the production value is just so sky high. It's fabulous. Like, because they got to keep up with stuff for Netflix and Disney Plus and all that jazz. And I think it does stand up to it. It really does.
I'd agree. Now, the thing I want to bring up
Go on, then.
is, and I'm not sure whether this is anything that anyone else has any opinions on, is this episode 5?
Sorry, of what?
Of Flux. Apparently there's a behind-the-scenes clapperboard that shows it being listed as episode 5.
Oh, right. I see.
That's right, isn't it?
It's 4. It's 4 in the sequence.
No, this is broadcast as episode 4. Sorry, yeah. But there's a clapperboard that shows it being episode 5.
Right.
And there are all sorts of. I can't claim entire credit for this. John Bloom has, on Galley Bases, sort of pointed this out and said there are weird things about this, and they partially may explain the weird interpolations of the Bell and Vinder stuff into this, and all sorts of things. And the more I was looking at it on rewatching, I was thinking this does feel like it would be. I mean, the Jodie turning into an angel thing. If that doesn't feel like a penultimate episode cliffhanger of a series, then I don't know what
So
does.
remind me what happens in Survivors of the Flux, the next one.
Well, there's a lot of mucking about on a spaceship, isn't there?
Yeah, as he points out, there's a circular loop plot for the companions just to get to meet up with old what's his name in the tunnels. There's the Great Serpent and Kate Stewart.
Oh yeah.
Or Great Serpent interfering with unit history stuff, which again is possibly surplus to. So his theory, based on the fact that, or springboarding from the fact that there is apparently behind the scenes footage which shows a clapperboard where this was marked as episode 5 when they were filming it. Mm-hmm. His theory is that basically they filmed the series in 2 blocks, one of which was directed by Jeremy Magnus Stone, which was the first 2 episodes, plus this, and then there's the rest. And if it was written later, then his theory is that basically Chibnall wrote episode 6 and found that he had about twice as much, or he had about an hour and a half of material in it, or too much material to fit into the available space.
Right.
Where that falls down for me is that you'd think, well, wouldn't you just go to the BBC and say, can I have an extra long episode?
Or hire a really good editor.
But the fact that there's these sort of circular things inserted into the existing episode 5, the fact, and the really weird fact is, because you think, well, that's the least of your problems to change, is the fact that the stuff in the Bell and Vinder stuff in this feels like it should be in an episode called Survivors of the Flux, more than what we actually get in episode 5. But you think, well, changing the title is the least of your worries.
I mean, it all falls down to, there's that rumour around, isn't there, that this was meant to be more than 6 episodes anyway, and because of COVID and whatever, it got shrunk and stuff. So you think how much of that, if it did happen, had impact on sort of what you were saying.
Or did they have to effectively lose an episode from Flux in order to have the centenary special at the end as an extra when they were asked to do that? But you would think that would be an additional commission. But it's interesting because the other thing that does relate to it that made me think, okay, maybe there's something to it, but it could have just been insurance, is obviously the Halloween Apocalypse was made to go out on Halloween, and obviously this has 3 references to the date on which it was actually broadcast, 21st of November. Yeah, it's the same day in 1967 that this was actually airing.
Okay.
But the three times that is mentioned in dialogue, it's never on screen. There are cutaways to other.
Yeah, it's ADR, isn't it?
Right.
And sometimes very egregious cutaways to just literally enough time for someone to say 21st of November, and then it cuts back to the count saying 1967, and so that could have just been put together like that for insurance purposes. But on the other hand, if they were doing an episode that was set on Halloween, they must have been pretty confident they weren't going to be able to repair that. So you think, well, why do belt and braces on something that's far less?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't have really mattered if this had gone out on the 28th of November and had reference to the wrong date or whatever. But it certainly looks like it's ADR and has possibly been changed and had a very late edit to accommodate them bringing it into line with a new air date or an air date after they filmed it. So I don't know. It's an interesting what if. It's probably one of these things that we'll never know the answer to.
Well,
and it does beg the question about what which original episode disappeared, if there was one that was just a standalone somewhere else.
I mean, it feels like that could have then been a pattern, couldn't it? You could have had one which was like a smorgasbord, 2 was the Centaurans, 3 was a thing, and then anyway. But there's no Cybermen, are there? And Cybermen are kind of built up as being a thing. They do appear very briefly in something or other, but you don't get. You sort of felt like there was going to be a Cyberman episode, didn't you? I wonder if that went by there.
Well, 1, 2, and this one are the relatively standalone ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 3, 5, and 6 are the very arc-heavy ones that were shot later. And the other thing is that because this is over length, it's whatever it is, It's almost an hour long, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those cases where if you cut out those 3 scenes with Bell and Vinda, you'd end up with a 50-minute episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which again looks a bit suggestive, but anyway, food for thought.
Okay. Anyone got other stuff they want to talk about this? I've got some linky stuff to sort of chew over, but...
I've got 2 small
Go on then.
production details. One is just a minor. When they're standing facing the barrier, you can see the mark in the grass that they've put for the actors as reference, so they know where to stand. I noticed that on rewatch.
Okay.
But a more interesting thing, there is a scene where Claire comes in, turns and faces a mirror, and she walks towards the mirror, puts her head down. I think is there a basin there?
Yes, yeah.
And then,
That's when she
and then
spreads
as
the
she
wings.
lifts,
Oh, the wings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the camera pushes in, and she grows her wings.
Yeah.
Right. In that shot, the camera is directly facing the mirror, and she walks into shot between the camera and the mirror,
Right.
and there is no camera in the reflection of the mirror, which there would be because the camera is behind her, right? Does that make sense? Watch that scene again. The way it's staged, there is a wall with a mirror, but the mirror is an aperture, it's a window. So the real actor of Claire walks in behind the aperture. A body double walks in front. So Claire is playing her reflection only. Sorry, I don't know the actual actor's name. And so very carefully in sync, the body double and the real Claire put their heads down. They're not quite perfectly in sync, but it's close enough that you don't notice if you're just watching it once. And then the body double steps away, and then the camera just shoots her as she stands up, and then VFX puts the wings in. But it's very beautifully done, and it's very clever. And there was a similar shot done in Terminator 2 that was cut, which uses Linda Hamilton's twin sister. So you actually see the facial reflection.
Yeah.
And it's a real shame they didn't use it. But they used it so that they could have a prosthetic Arnold Schwarzenegger in the foreground, having his brain scooped out. And Arnie was playing his reflection. And Linda Hamilton's twin was playing her reflection. And it's very neatly done. But yes, this was an extension of that same principle.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
it was a very nicely done shot. So have a look
Good
at that.
Lord. How the magic works, eh?
Yeah. Thank you.
And it's funny because she grows angel wings, your brain just says, well, they presumably took the camera out with VFX. Because you just think, well, I guess that would be the easiest thing. But no, the easiest thing is to not spend any money on expensive post-production if you don't absolutely have to. You've already put angel wings in that shot. Do it a simpler way.
So we've talked already, I guess, about the fact that we've got 2 villages that are cut off by barriers. We've got churches, we've got vicars, we've got bits that are in darkness, and we've got animated statues. We get companions cut off from the Doctor and each other. I mean, primarily in the Demons, it's the Brigadier, but you have some of them the wrong side of the barrier from each other. We've got ancient and dangerous enemies. So you've got the Demon. You've got the angels, they sort of inhabit a similar sort of ground. You've also got the Master and you've got Division as well, sort of elements from the Doctor's past who are sort of getting themselves mixed up in the whole thing and making it more complicated. The Doctor can't defeat the enemy, and so in the Demons it's Joe who steps in and sorts stuff out. If Joe didn't do that, the Doctor's dead and it's all over. And I guess similarly here, the angels have got the Doctor at the end, and had it not been for the fact that Tecteun waves a magic wand or something at the start of the next one, then the Doctor's an angel. You've got these 2 sort of snug areas that feel safe but really aren't. So you've got the pub in the Demons, which is actually Bert's domain, and he's spying on them the whole time, and they're not remotely safe, but they feel like they're safe there. And similarly, within Jericho's house, you've got this, it feels like they're safe, but actually the angels are able to get in, and they're having to run out in the end quite quickly. you've got the whole. I think you've mentioned this before. You've got the whole village coming together, in the May Festival in Demons, and I guess earlier with the Master bringing them together, and you've also got them searching for Peggy in this second one. So you've got that sort of event that gets everyone together, and they're both part of wider arc stories. So the Demons is the end of the 5-part Master season, probably the arciest that Doctor Who's been up to this point, and this is part of the 6-part Flux story. And I'll give you one more that's sort of out of universe, which is that they're both written by the showrunner and one other person. So that was Linktastic this week. The Angels are patient, but Azal isn't. Stunned into silence. Any final thoughts?
Not sure I can add much to that.
Well, I was just pondering whether, he's been asleep for 100,000 years, so he's shown some small amount of patience, if that counts.
Patience or just laziness?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's like a long lie-in, isn't it? Just waiting.
Power nap.
Yeah, waiting for his parcel to be
Well,
delivered.
hang on though. Atlantis. Was Atlantis someone different? Was Atlantis someone different then?
Atlantis.
Yeah, because they finished off Atlantis because they got bored with them.
Oh yeah.
That definitely wasn't 100,000 BC. I don't know.
No.
I don't know why they just decide to destroy stuff that they don't like. But anyway, I suppose it's up to them, isn't it? They can do it.
I'm like that.
Yeah.
Just smash it. I'm like that with podcasts that don't work. Just delete them.
Is that it?
I can't think of anything.
Nothing.
That's fine. No, look. No worries. It is very nearly midnight, so that's fine.
I've done the dog.
Yeah.
The cat.
How did the dog feel about it?
No,
Rough.
the dog in the graveyard.
Hey!
Hey!
Carvanista joke.
Dog in the graveyard. The counting still, of course, it's not.
Yeah,
not
it's a shame that
not a link,
Carvanista wasn't
but
in it.
that's- Yes, yeah.
It's not really relevant to this episode, but tangentially, the impact of that cliffhanger and the disappointment by the resolution the following week
Yeah.
are inversely proportional. It's such a shame. I don't know where you go with that cliffhanger anyway, in a best case scenario, but to just, undo it.
I would have at least given her half a story as an angel,
Yeah.
and then maybe sorted
Yes.
it out later, rather than, as you said,
Yeah.
like magic wand, like fixed.
Build the tension,
Yeah.
make it seem like it's a real
Yeah.
problem, rather than just she got on the bus, she got on the angel bus, and she popped off the other end.
Sounds like something at Glastonbury, the angel bus.
I can't look at that passenger mask
Oh my
Anymore.
god.
with having seen it on.
Wish or whatever it was.
Oh, amazing.
What's this?
Absolutely amazing. Passenger's face is an off-the-shelf plastic mask.
What?
Absolutely
Good
identical.
lord. Okay.
It's like $12 or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, good lord.
And you just... And it unbelievable.
Okay.
It's like giving your best monster a sink plunger, isn't it? Okay, well, look, thanks for spending your time chatting about these two stories. I think we've learnt a little from each other tonight, and I think we've probably just about teased as much as it's possible to be teased out of these two. But it's been fun doing it. If you've enjoyed listening to us, then it would be great if you would mention that to other people, so we get the benefit of their listening ears too. If you're able to put a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be fantastic, and indeed anywhere else that you review podcasts, that'd be great. And we'll speak to you again probably in about a month's time. But for now, thanks for listening and goodbye.
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 Bye.
Here's a clip from my other podcast.
Hi Richard, what are you up to?
Oh, hello, Emily. I was just checking up on the download numbers for our last episode.
Oh my gosh, Richard, you're obsessed with stats.
Well, maybe, but how else are we going to get rich?
How are we going to get rich?
Well, look, I mean, finance is your speciality, but I guess it's through all the downloads.
But we're giving them away for free?
We're doing what?
Yes, Richard, it's a podcast. People listen for free, but they still get something from it, and we enjoy making them.
This is weird. So what you're saying is we can create value by giving something away for free.
Yep. And we've got a guest who knows all about that. So for this episode, we're joined by Claire, who's worked in a number of public sector and voluntary roles, including some senior roles in the civil service.
Hello, Claire, and welcome to If It's Hurting, It's Not Working. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's really great to be here.
In the civil service, you worked on a number of initiatives that people will have heard of, like the Millennium Dome and Northern Ireland Peace Process and latterly Brexit.
And you worked with politicians whose names will be familiar to our listeners. Claire, what was your first job?
So my first job was working in the local ironmonger's shop, which was like an Aladdin's cave. It's just full of every possible gadget and household appliance DIY thing. Fishing accessories, maggots, everything. And I was surrounded by some really wise and knowledgeable people, and I learned a lot doing that. And then my first job after university was as a locum epidemiologist.
So what did that involve? That caught my attention there.
So that was about supporting the Director of Public Health in looking at disease management and preventative health within the area. So
Wow.
it's a word that people become more familiar with over the last couple of years with COVID than they ever were before.
Okay, so what's been your favourite job? And if you can maybe tell us why that was.
It's quite a tricky one because I think I've been very lucky and I've had a lot of jobs that I've really, really loved doing. And I was thinking about what makes a good job. And for me, it's a combination of having a boss who's supportive and inspiring, a role that feels interesting and worthwhile and where you feel you're making a valuable contribution, and you're working with a good team of colleagues and staff.
So one thing that Emily and I were keen to ask you about, because it's outside our experience, was what it's like to work on programmes and in jobs with people that are in the public eye.
Well, I suppose to start with, it's a bit startling. And I can remember the first time I heard a minister read out in Parliament something that I drafted in his speaking notes, thinking, wow, those are my words. I wrote that. And then seeing those words quoted in the newspaper is really quite surreal.
What do you think could be your secret of success, Claire?
In the classroom at the moment, the secret of my success is Beth and Badger. Because I found that children are far more inclined to follow instructions and want to impress a small badger than a fat middle-aged woman. So that has been surprisingly useful. But from my professional career, thinking back on the feedback I've had, I think two quotes from people who've worked in my teams over the years. One, as part of my 360 feedback, said it was inspiring and refreshing to work for a boss who we know won't bullshit us. Mm-hmm. And the other one said to me one evening, Claire, we love you because you're a real person. And I think the point that comes from both of those comments, which certainly chimes with how I try to be as a leader and now as a teacher, is the importance of authenticity. And perhaps it does all come down to keeping it real.
You missed the opportunity for some kind of Ellie mental joke, which has just occurred to me.
You've heard them all before.
You can go back and write one in.
You say opportunity.
Yeah. Delete podcast.
The elemental forces brought to this podcast.
Trying to work out an opportunity to say "stir your stumps," but apparently it was an improvised line by Pertwee for the old slideshow thing.
No, Paul told us to wait him for fuck's sake. Sorry. See, the wine doesn't make any difference.
Oh God, sorry. It's so good working with professionals, isn't it?
Acting.
Where's Paul?
I don't know.
Maybe we should go and look for him.
Sorry, my screen just turned itself off as I was about to read my line. Siri, turn power saving mode off.
A scheduling issue means that Paul is sadly missing this time, but we'll hope you. I wish I could speak tonight. We hope he'll be back soon.